After initially saying medicinal marijuana could be smoked anywhere, anytime, the Ontario government says it's going to rethink the announcement. Constable James Forcillo has resumed testimony in the shooting death of Sammy Yateen.
A passerby observed what they believe to be suspicious behavior of these.
And the RCMP is asking for the public's help to identify two men who displayed suspicious behavior this summer in downtown Toronto.
Hi, and welcome to Humber News. I'm Matt Hartley, coming to you here from our newsroom at Humber College North Campus. We have breaking news this hour. The Ontario government is doing a U-turn on its announcement to change the Smokefree Ontario Act. Late yesterday, the government said people would be allowed to smoke medical pot anytime, anywhere. But this afternoon, the government announced it is rethinking that move. The government says it's heard concerns from people and that it's going to take a hard look at the legislation. Smoking a medical joint in public has never been against the regulations, so the new rule would have applied only to e-cigarettes. Constable James Forcillo is testifying in his own defense again today. It is the second day on the stand for the Toronto police officer who shot and killed Sammy Yateen in July 2013. Humber reporter Keon Clark is at the courthouse and has this report.
Forcillo was on the stand today discussing that he basically had to open fire on him because the distance wasn't far enough. Also, they addressed the reason why he shot Yateen so many times because, according to police protocol, you have to keep shooting until you're 100% sure the suspect is subdued. Also, they brought attention to an incident a few years ago at Kensington Market where Officer Forcillo was able to subdue two suspects, both having knives, in a crowded area. And he was able to subdue them until backup arrived. Keon Clark, Humber News.
Meanwhile, the bail hearing for the driver charged in connection with September's deadly car crash in Vaughan has been adjourned again. This is the third hearing for 29-year-old Marco Muso that has been postponed. Defense lawyer Brian Greenspan says he needs more time to review police evidence in the case. Global News reports that Muso is being held in solitary confinement for his own safety. The next hearing has been scheduled for December 10th. The RCMP is asking for public's help in identifying two men who reported behaving suspiciously near the Rogers Centre on August 31st. The appeal was made this morning at a news conference in Milton.
In this instance, on August 31st, 2015, a passerby observed what they believe to be suspicious behavior of these two males while on the John Street Bridge in the area of the Rogers Centre in the downtown area of Toronto.
The RCMP says there's no imminent threat to the public. Police say they just want to speak to the men. Former Prime Minister Stephen Harper was at the Rogers Centre watching the Blue Jays game the day the two men were spotted. Ontario's Special Investigations Unit has cleared 3 police officers involved in a shooting in March. Peel Police were called to a dispute on Queen Frederica Drive in Mississauga. The incident left 1 man dead and injured a bystander and 2 police officers. The independent agency concluded the shooting was legally justified under the Criminal Code. The chair of Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission says that the new Trudeau government is taking a step in the right direction, but he says it won't be able to single-handedly repair the damage to Aboriginal people who were forced into residential schools. Our reporter Nicole Williams has the story.
Justice Murray Sinclair was at Humber College's Lakeshore campus yesterday to help students put Canadian history into perspective. Sinclair is the first Aboriginal judge appointed in Manitoba and head of Indian Residential Schools Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It is the only commission in the world to look into the treatment of children at the hands of the government. Sinclair also outlined the steps towards reconciliation.
So reconciliation involves putting back those things that were taken, rebuilding those things that have been destroyed, and allowing those people who have been disrespected and mistreated for so long to find an opportunity to stand back on their own 2 feet, free from control by the hands of others.
The commission spent 6 years listening to survivors talk about their time in residential schools. Sinclair says he acknowledges that the path towards reconciliation is too long for the Trudeau government to accomplish alone. He also says what's important is opening the dialogue that has been silenced for so long by the Canadian government.
What I think we need to really begin to move towards is to see if we can deal with that mistrust and misunderstanding so that we're able to establish a proper, respectful relationship. And that's going to take some time. It took us 7 generations to create this mess. It's going to take us a few generations to deal with it properly.
Sinclair says that it's important for all Canadians to make sure that they speak for those who cannot speak for themselves and to remember the children that will never return home. Nicole Williams, Humber News.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has beat out the competition yet again. He's now Maclean's Newsmaker of the Year. Maclean says Trudeau is the year's most fascinating newsmaker. Trudeau is joined by a long list of people with this year's biggest headlines. The list includes Donald Trump, Jose Bautista, and singer Adele. Even among the stiff competition, Maclean says Trudeau was an easy choice for the top honour. And it looks like the apple has not fallen far from the tree. Back in 1999, Justin's father, Pierre Elliott Trudeau, was named Canada's Newsmaker of the 20th century by the Canadian press. Overseas, today marks the 7th anniversary of the attacks in Mumbai, and government officials gathered to pay tribute to the victims. Wreaths were laid at the memorial site, and government officials met with the families of the victims. 10 gunmen went on a 3-day shooting rampage in 2008, killing 166 people. They attacked luxury hotels, a train station, and a Jewish center. The surviving gunman was hanged in 2012. It's the biggest terror attack since 9/11. That anniversary comes nearly 2 weeks after the attacks in Paris, and the band playing at the Bataclan Hall that night is speaking out for the first time. The Eagles of Death Metal gave their first interview after gunmen terrorized their concert, taking hostages and executing 89 innocent concertgoers.
At first, I thought it was the PA cracking up, and then I realized real quick that it wasn't. And I recognized what it was.
I was still standing up, and I can see the gunman, and he looked right at me, and he shot at me, and he missed.
I felt so guilty in a way that, like, I'd left Matt on the stage and maybe Davey too, and I didn't want anything to have happened to them, and I really needed them to have gotten off the stage because I didn't see what happened when we got off.
For God's sake, like their parents, I wish I could talk to their parents. I sort of want to just get down on my knees, you know, and just say whatever you need.
Right.
Because there's nothing I can really say.
More protests today in Chicago over the shooting death of 17-year-old Laquan McDonald.
16 shots.
McDonald was shot 16 times by Officer Jason Van Dyke over a year ago. The shooting ignited protest after a dashcam video was released to the public Tuesday evening.
It makes no point to shoot somebody that never even tried to hurt a cop. It's senseless.
McDonald was the latest in a string of black males killed by white police officers in the States. Van Dyke has been charged with first-degree murder. Our neighbors to the south are celebrating Thanksgiving today. Before sitting down for their turkey dinner tonight, many families around New York City are attending the annual Macys Thanksgiving Parade. In light of recent terrorist attacks overseas, police are on high alert since 3.5 million people are expected to attend the event.
We all know that what terrorists try and do is intimidate. Well, the people in New York City are not intimidated. You can see it here today. They're coming out in droves to celebrate everything great about this city and everything great about this country today.
This year, the largest number of NYPD officers are guarding the parade. There are also hundreds of new counter-terror personnel lining the streets. The same can't be said for those turkeys. Donald Trump is known for his outrageous comments and outlandish behavior, but this latest soundbite has critics especially upset.
A couple of good paragraphs.
During a rally in South Carolina, Trump appears to mock a disabled New York Times reporter. Have a look.
You got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember. He's going like, I don't remember. Oh, maybe that's what I said.
The New York Times and several advocacy groups have called Trump's actions insensitive. Overseas, the Pope held a mass for thousands today on the second day of his tour through Africa. The rain wasn't enough to put a damper on the crowd as Francis drove his Pope-mobile through the University of Nairobi. He preached the importance and tolerance of inclusivity among religions. Francis is in Africa to try and mend the relationship between Catholics and Muslims. It's the Pope's first visit to the continent. Miners in Myanmar are still searching for precious stones despite a deadly landslide that claimed more than 100 lives. Last Saturday, a man-made mountain gave way, burying miners who were asleep at the foot of the hill. Yesterday, a large crowd of workers rushed to another mountain in search of jade. Poorly paid migrant workers often pick over dump sites in search of remnants of the green stone. The value of jade production in Myanmar is estimated at over $31 billion. Here at Humber, it was a rough morning commute for Humber College students who take the 191 to school. A collision at the busiest time of the morning held up traffic in both directions. The bus collided with a Toyota Corolla on Highway 27 just north of Rexdale. There were no serious injuries. Students gathered in the courtyard for some free hot chocolate and to witness an ice carving to get into the holiday spirit. Persis Abraham has more.
Humber College's marketing program is hosting an ice carving event right outside in the courtyard. The purpose of this event is for Humber's holiday e-card that the marketing team is creating to get the Humber community in the holiday spirit. Students are encouraged to stop by, watch the ice carving, and grab a free hot chocolate.
We're actually filming our Humber holiday e-card. So we're developing an e-card for distribution for our staff and faculty and to share with their friends and family as well as to other industry partners. The snowflake represents Humber's uniqueness and originality like a snowflake, so that's why we decided to go with that theme.
Mike Poole has been ice carving for 9 seasons now and says it takes a lot of time and commitment to create the perfect ice sculpture.
Well, it's a funny story because for about 20 years I toured as a sound man doing monitors for the likes of like B.B. King and Ray Charles and a bunch of the blues artists, and I wanted to slow things down and not travel so much, so down the street was this factory called Ice Culture from where I was living at the time, and I thought, oh, okay, I'll get a part-time truck driving job and just hang out there and hang out with the kids for a while. Well, I walked into this place and one thing led to another, and they put chainsaws in my hands and kind of taught me this whole art, and so that's what I'm doing. And it's 9 years later now, and kind of out touring the world again, doing stuff again, carving ice now, though.
Many students gathered around the courtyard to watch Mike carve the snowflake sculpture and even posed in selfie frames to give shout-outs to family and friends. Make sure when you come down, you use the selfie frame to give your family and friends a shout-out for the holidays. Persis Abraham, Humber News.
When we come back, we'll tell you what's happening in the world of sports, and Charlotte Morritt-Jacobs will have your 3-day forecast.
From drizzy Drake to just plain drizzly, today we're seeing a lot of overcast with a chance of showers. I'll have your full 3-day forecast after the break.
But first, hundreds of people spiced up the streets of Cuba with some hot salsa in an attempt to break a world record yesterday. More than 1,000 performers gathered in Havana to set the record for the biggest salsa dance around the world. Applicants from around the world underwent a strict screening process before being selected to cut a rug. Dancers shook their hips for 15 consecutive minutes, attempting to break the previous record held by Greece. The attempt has been submitted to the Guinness authorities for review.